Cool. Optimized. There we go. Welcome
Optimized.
to YouTube. Here we are.
Oh, hey, are we on YouTube?
We are. We are on YubTub, hanging out,
Great. Hi, YouTube.
making the show.
Good afternoon, evening, wherever you are. It's 4:45 here.
It could be morning for you. Who knows?
It could be morning for you. Who knows? Yeah, we do have people who listen across the world, all over the world. That's kind of fun.
It is pretty crazy. That's a little bit nuts, actually. I don't think I want to think about that too hard.
Humbling for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know, right? To know that others are listening to the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We are just this is the weekly hangout. We're hanging out here before the show. This is the pre-show show. Hang on. I'm gonna type in chat. Hi, guys. It's Nick. There we go. See, look, we got a chat. There's a chat going on. We're recording and stuff. It's fun. It's
excellent. Look at you, Nick.
Yeah. Blake, I don't want to jump right into the show notes. I don't want to do that. Let's cool. Give the people what they came here for. Let's banter a little bit before the banter.
Is that what people come here for? Is a little bit of banter?
I don't know, man.
That's fine.
I don't know. What are you here for? What are you watching this for?
Yeah, if you're watching, jump in the chat and tell us what you're here for, because I'm happy to give you whatever you're looking for at this point.
This is a little bit more loose. This is not a well-produced part of the show. If you're anyway, Blake, how are you, man? Like, we've just been technical this whole time. How are you? Like, I want to take a break. How is my good buddy Blake?
I'm glad to be doing this at this point. It's been a long day. I don't know. It's just it's a weird month, whatever. How about you, man? What's going on in Nick's world today?
No, it's a long week, man. That's for sure. We're in the thick of like usability studies. So like I'm just every day, and it's all remote, and it's just problem after problem. And
yeah. Problem wise, what are you dealing with? Is it like just technical problems, or just like the typical
you know what? Some
grind?
of this I don't want to spoil. We will talk about some of this on the show, but
Rad.
Yeah, it's been a crazy hectic week, and I'm happy to do this. By the way, I'm not going to mention who reached out to me. I'm not going to mention what they reached out to me about, but Blake, we might have.
I'm just going to tell you.
This is weird.
That somebody had a conversation with me, and that's it.
This is weird because there's a potential for a bonus episode here.
A bony episode
that would require not a whole lot of effort on our part to put together, but would be incredibly impactful. And so it's kind of weird because I don't want to give away what it is on the show or on this YouTube pre-show.
Yeah.
Whatever this is.
I got you.
Remind me after this and I'll tell you. But the gist is that we might have an additional show. And so I'm currently in the process of writing to this individual about setting something up and
that's
all that.
Sick, man. That's so exciting. I don't even know what it is, but it sounds good.
It's pretty good.
It sounds very official though.
It's not official. I mean, it kind of maybe, I don't know. Yeah. Here's what I'll say.
Something.
It's for a specific day. It's a day related thing. We would want it to be topical. We'd want it to come out on that day. That's all I'm going to say for now.
Gotcha. Okay. It's Human Factors Day, everybody.
Human Factors Day.
God.
Is there a Human Factors Day? I don't know.
Of course there is. It's a national holiday in HFES, isn't it? Or am I making that up? Probably am.
I don't know.
Probably.
All right. So I think at this point, we're 10 minutes out from wanting to record the show. We should probably work on the show notes. I worked a little bit on them. So we're going to do this. This is going to be a little bit of a fun, interesting live experiment, if you will. We're actually going to develop some of the show notes here live. I took some steps to do this a little bit ahead of time, just so that way we have a basic structure. But let's see here. So in terms of our topic tonight, we are letting our patrons choose the news, so to speak. And this week, steering a balloon with sound waves could be the secret to touching objects in VR. We have an ongoing list of about 6 or 7 different news stories that, if you're unfamiliar, we do have a Slack channel. You can hang out with us in Slack and send us things especially if they're news stories, you can find us there and let us know, and we'll might talk about them on the show depending on what the patrons choose. But yeah, we had some interesting topics that we could have talked about, and we are talking about steering a balloon with sound waves, and this is interesting too. Anyway, so Blake, if you want to go ahead and do that part of the so what we do, again, we're kind of opening up the hood for everyone joining us here, right? What we usually do is we read these stories in advance, and what we do on the day of is we kind of take the story, the article that it was published. In this case, it was by Gizmodo, and we kind of condense it and add our own flair to it to give it that human factors cast spin. We shape the problem space from a human factors perspective and do a little blurb on it. And from there, we read it on the show. I don't know. I feel like I'm just describing what we normally do, and it's so mundane to us, but I'm sure people are curious, right?
I mean, it's the normal workflow, right? Like, we take the article, break it up into little pieces that we want to talk about, and then basically I sit here and reread what Nick's put together so that I can actually read it, and then we're going from there. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, or at least it feels like that. But man, how long have we done this format? Like 2 years? 2 years this format, right?
We switched very early on to doing the news. We've had a couple iterations since. I don't know. Because we used to do several stories in one show.
Yeah.
We used to do like 3 or 4 stories, and that felt way too much.
Well, we would just like blast through it, and then it would just like we might get a little bit of like fun banter in there, but really it was kind of just reading the stories and talking a couple points. Why did we changed the format because of COVID? But it seems like this has worked out better in my opinion. Feels like it's more entertaining.
So too. Yeah, so yeah, you're right. We did condense. We switched down to 1 because of COVID, because no one's listening to podcasts anymore. And in fact,
well, that too, and like there was no news you and I could pick up that wasn't COVID related, especially in the beginning.
Yeah,
so we don't even want to talk about that here.
Yeah, and so yeah, we did just kind of condense it to human factors news, and we non-COVID related, because this was kind of people's escape, and we kind of turned it into this one story show, which is fine. I think it allows us to really deep dive a little bit more. And I'm going to do a quick plug for our Slack here. Actually, speaking of condensing, so we actually did the condensing in an effort to reduce the length of time that our podcast was, right? So we went down to like 30-minute shows. And, this was because people weren't traveling. People weren't driving in their cars. They were working from home, still are working from home. And finding time to listen to podcasts is especially difficult, which is part of the reason why we're actually trying to break out of that mold and stream on YouTube and Twitch and all that stuff now here too, is because we want to offer an additional alternative place to get this content. We know it's important to a lot of you, so.
And I would love to like have a much more interactive feel to the podcast. Like, I think podcasts are cool, and I like ones that go up on YouTube and I listen to them and stuff. But I also would like to bring in the chat aspect and have them be a part of parts of the show. Or like, sometimes when Nick looks to me or I look to him and like, do you have any other thoughts, or what do you think about this topic? I mean, I would love to throw that into chat. And
look at chat and see who's saying what. Yeah. So anyway, all that to say, plugging the Slack channel, we did have a member of our Slack post say, "Hey, I had no more commute and lost my headphones case, which doubles as a charger. How is everyone getting their podcast listening in these days?" This isn't something that we would say on the show because it's not really human factors related, but I thought this would be kind of fun to just talk about, just in general, like before we even go on. How are you getting in your podcast these days, Blake?
Honestly, man, I've kind of quit listening to them.
Yeah.
There's one. No, okay, so that's not true. I quit listening to my staples of podcasts because I got tired of what I was hearing. And when I shifted it back into really focusing on music. I started listening to a lot more music instead of podcast. Now I have jumped into a couple that are like audio production and drum focused, but really I listen to those because they are short. They're like 20 to 30 minutes maximum versus like the marathon 3-hour ones I used to listen to a bunch. So I think my tastes have just personally changed, and so podcasts fall really by the wayside for me to listen to.
Yeah, I'll say the same. Like so for listeners who have been listening for a long time, they know I used to commute like 3 hours a day. And so a lot of that time was spent listening to podcasts, and I would listen to my podcast at twice the speed. So I was getting 6 hours of podcasting in a day.
That's a serious amount of podcasts. And you listen, because you listen to it double time. That always used to make me laugh.
And so yeah, I was getting 6 hours of content a day. Then I guess it was a year and a half ago. We moved closer to my employer at the time, and my commute went from 3 hours to maybe 15 minutes in the morning and half an hour in the evening. So I was 45 minutes. And so if you double time that, it's like an hour and a half. So I was still, condensing my time by like over 2/3. And so at that point I had to trim which ones I was listening to. And I had to really kind of decide, okay, which ones do I get the most out of? And I'm going through that same process again here, because I still, I've trimmed it, and I'm still have my podcasts I like, and I still would like to listen to them, but some of them are really long form, right? Like one is an hour and 20 minutes, and then another one, that's half time. So it's like they're doing like a 2.5 hour podcast, and I really have to pick and choose which ones I'm doing. And it's like in between going to grab dinner or something, which could take 5-10 minutes, or sometimes I'll just do it while I'm watching my kid while he's playing in his room or something. I'll just be listening to it passively, doing the dishes or chores or anything. But yeah, it's really hard to like fit it in.
And it's sometimes one of those things that I can't, like, for when I'm doing development tasks, which is the majority of what I'm doing right now this year, like I can't do peripheral things at the same time. Like I used to be, like when I'm designing, there is music on or there's a podcast on, but like development stuff, I can't. I haven't gotten to that point yet where it works. So that like cuts probably my content consumption, cuts a quarter of it out.
Yeah, I feel you, man. Like it's tough. It's tough. And I don't even I can't listen to podcasts or anything while I'm doing work. It's too distracting for me. I get caught up in what I'm listening to. And so, the other method I've been doing, which is part of the reason why we wanted to do this, is I've been, if it's on YouTube, I can just put it on the TV and listen to it passively. And so that's like another way to listen to it. And especially if it's live, it adds this kind of interesting component to it, right? We're live right now.
Yeah. And I've always liked the aspect of podcasts that actually had a video component to them, because there's something that was just more entertaining about it, and it just felt like an event almost in some ways. So
now people can see my messy bookshelf and your wonderful lush green wall there. What is that? Is that plants?
Yeah, it's just like a plant, a wall, or like a wall plant or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. How's that blurb going? We got that?
Good? I'm feeling good. I just don't know what to talk about for banter, because I feel like I've given it to the world now. Oh. So now I got to figure it out on the fly.
See, here's the thing. We got to come up with 2 pieces of banter now. One human factors related for the show, and one just regular BS that we can talk about before the show. I kind of like that idea.
Yep. It's insane.
I got my banter. Let's see here. I'll just do one more quick pass over the you know what? I didn't check the weekly It Came From thread. So if also for our patrons, we do a weekly It Came From thread. This is for the It Came From part of the show. We offer them kind of a first stab. If they have any questions, they get to the front of the line. We haven't had any takers in the 3 weeks that we've done it, but that's okay. We're going to keep posting this. If you're interested in becoming a patron and getting to that front of the line and getting your question on the show, that's something you can do. We have our Patreon link in the description below for your convenience. But yeah, consider becoming a patron. We actually recently refactored a lot of our patron stuff. So our patrons are getting something every day of the week in some capacity. So, and we recently sent out a survey to make sure that, it wasn't too much. So everything but Wednesdays, I think they're getting something. So on Mondays, they're getting the patrons choose the news. So that's when we'll post all the stories and they get to pick throughout the week. And we'll add to it throughout the week too. And then on Tuesdays, they get Human Factors Minute. Wednesdays, they get a break. Thursdays, they get the regular show. And then Fridays, they get the weekly It Came From thread in preparation for the following week's show. So they're getting something every day almost. You get a break on weekends and Wednesdays.
That's a fair amount of content.
It's a lot of stuff. We've been trying to ramp up the patron stuff. We like to, support the people that support the show. So we want to put in a little bit extra effort for that. All right. So nothing there for our last section. I do have a great one this week. An anonymous source wrote into the show. So we can certainly talk about this one.
Sweet. Man.
All right.
Sounds like a good time.
How are you on your end? Did you get the banter? We're good on that?
I think I'm good. It's as good as I'm going to get. I think, sir.
All right, man. Well, why don't we give it the old countdown here and we'll get started. So for those of you watching, this is all behind the scenes. You get to see us record the full show. All right. You got Audacity up? You good to go?
Yep. Should be all right.
All right. We'll give you the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the show. It's episode 193. Today is February 11th, 2021, and this is Human Factors Cast. I'm your host, Nick Roome. I'm joined today, as always, by Mr. Blake Arnsdorff.
As sometimes, not always, but it's good to be here.
You know what? You're here most of the time. I'm going to say as always. You know what? You're always in my heart.
Oh, my goodness.
For this show. We're already getting sappy, and it's only, 2 seconds into the show. All right. We do got an excellent news story for you this week, and we're going to be taking a great question, if I do say so myself. We're going to be talking about steering a balloon with sound waves and how that could be the secret to touching objects in virtual reality. But first, I got to know what's going on in Blake's world, because we did a little banter before the show. I got to know what's going on with you.
Loving Streamlabs as always. I feel like I just had a major hiccup. So I'm sorry anybody that's watching on YouTube if you had a little bit of a dark screen for a moment. But things are overall pretty good, man. I really can't complain. It's been a long week, and I'm ready for it to kind of slowly come to an end, and stoked for like an upcoming long weekend. And I know Valentine's Day is this weekend as well, so that'll be a fun time hanging out with someone that I love. So, but one thing that I've kind of come up with in the past few months really is, like, for anybody that's been listening to the show, and Nick, you probably know this, I've been trying to teach myself how to play drums, and it's intensely infuriating. Trying to get all 4 of your limbs to do, simultaneously different things at sometimes, and then also get them to work in concert together sometimes as well. But one thing that I've really noticed, I think this past week, is the amount of like consistent work that I put into playing drums, whether it's like rudiments or sitting on the kit or whatever. The amount of like motor function that my body's able to adapt and actually pull off is mind-blowing. And so it's one of these things where I wonder if I was to be more consistent, with like trying to be more creative in my design work or in my development work, like putting more hours consistently into, learning the back end, for instance, how much like change I would see. Because like just a small kind of like 20 to 30 minutes like throughout the day in different areas, like working on double kick stuff or stuff with my hands for the drums, has, really paid off. So I'm getting ready to start experimenting with that in different areas of my like career life. So trying to do more illustration and design and asset development for the show. And then also like consistently trying to push my development skills on the background. So that's kind of what I'm up to right now, is just experimenting in a bunch of different places and trying to figure out how do I bring that in to the rest of my life where I've seen success. Yeah.
You know what? I really like that point because I have had that same moment of it's like a catharsis where everything just clicks, right? And it's when you're doing that coordination piece, right? And I distinctly remember this. It was a long time ago when I was in high school, and like my senior project was to learn how to play a song on the piano and develop that skill set. And I just remember being so frustrated by the coordination between my left hand and my right hand. I'm like lifetime gamer, right? So like I could definitely make my left hand and my right hand work in concert when it came to a video game controller, but not when it came to something like the piano. And it's like there's all this stuff going on. And I just remember, the one day it started clicking, and then it's like, wow, I'm making music with my hands. This is incredible. And then with piano you have the sustain foot pedal as well. So you add that in, and then once everything clicks, man, it is just I completely agree with you. It is just the most cathartic feeling. And to bring that into some of the other aspects of your life, I completely understand that too, because there was a moment a couple weeks ago where I was kind of doubting my ability, and then once we got into the thick of the thing that we're doing now, I was like, yes, I got it. Like, is that whole being on top of everything, not letting anything fumble. And then you run into some speed bumps and lose that confidence and then slowly gain it back. But yeah,
it's always
I totally get it.
Yeah. It's a funny thing, like, because like with music or whatever, I feel like so much of it is a long game, but the second that it works for like a moment, it's finally worth it. Like all those, like that time of being frustrated or like doubting yourself. And I think it happens at work too, where especially for me with development, right? Like, because that's something I am completely self-taught in. Actually, same with design now that I think about it. But regardless, like the moment you're able to kind of like realize, oh man, I actually just built this entire thing and it works to some degree in the way that it's needed to for a project or like a side gig or whatever it is. So those like little moments of kind of clarity are things that I think I've relatively been pretty bad about, cherishing or holding on to. But I think that's really what can keep you growing too, is like taking the moment to really enjoy the wins. And yeah, the speed bumps will come, but enjoy the small wins, because you never know when you're going to get another one.
Yeah, for sure. I got this thing I want to talk about. So I have been mentioning on the show for the last couple of weeks that I've been getting more into investing, and it's no secret that the whole GameStop thing happened, right? And during that whole thing,
what happened?
The GameStop thing. So anyway, look, I didn't lose money on it. I'm okay. Don't worry. But the thing that happened during the middle of it was that Robinhood actually, prevented some of its users from purchasing shares of specific companies that were considered meme stocks. And this obviously upset a lot of people. And so right now I'm struggling with the sacrificing usability of the Robinhood app. Like I'm not even going to get into what I think about it, but just from a political standpoint, I don't want to use that app anymore. And it's a very convenient and sexy looking app. It's very easy to use and to navigate and to purchase shares. It's just a swipe up and you're good. And so I'm using other apps, and nothing is quite it's not quite the same. There's a couple extra steps, and I'm really appreciating the usability from one step. But again, I'm kind of sacrificing that usability for my morals here. And it's been a little bit of a struggle, but it's something that I've been having to power through. And I'm just like, I've wanted to write several notes to this new company that I'm using. I won't mention them. It's not like it's bad UI by any means, but just when you put it next to something that's
obviously well designed.
Yeah, yep. It just kind of there's something left to be desired. And so I like want to just reach out to their team and be like, hey, I think this would be really nice if you did this.
I mean, why not, right? I mean, especially if they're like competitors out there in their space that are doing like Robinhood. I don't know. They're probably one of the bigger fintech companies out there. And I know they have a design focus and a pretty damn good design team that thinks about interactions and all the other design aspects that they have to. And so it's one of those things that, like, if I was you, I would reach out to the company because you just really never know who's on the other end of that email. I had an experience, I don't know, a year ago now with Black Rifle where I suggested a few things that I saw in the UI where I was kind of hedging my bets, but I'm pretty sure they were losing money. And like being able to just say something and see it implemented or not, it doesn't really matter. You've kind of done your due diligence as like a human factors person trying to bring, your perspective into the design of a product.
And that's what I'm struggling with a little bit too here is just, I am still learning the app. And I still have assets. I have assets now in both of them. And I will transfer from one to the other soon. I just would like to be more comfortable with the one that I'm using now. So I have some play money in there that I'm messing around with and trying not to lose too much by the interface itself. And so once I feel comfortable with it, I'll move everything over, but it's, I'm creating a list and I think I will send that email. But yeah, it's just one of those struggles where I'm like, I keep finding myself going back to the old one just to check. And it feels icky, man.
Oh no. Yeah, that's a tough one, right? Because I don't know. I really value a well-designed application. Honestly, especially in the music world, like, my goodness, there are so many metronomes and, click tracks and all that stuff you can get for your phone, and they are all horribly designed. There are very few that like really nail it. And even some that do from like the aesthetic design perspective, oh my God, the interactions don't make any sense and they're prone for error and it's nuts. So yeah, like trying to go backwards from something that really works to support either like moral decisions or in the case when you don't have an alternative, it's tough. It's very tough.
Anyway, it will get there. I'm okay with it. All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and get into this next part of the show? Yes, this is the part of the show all about human factors news. This is where we talk about everything related to the field of human factors. This can be anything from medical, privacy, security, robots. What do we got this week? Artificial intelligence, VR a little bit. As long as it relates to the field of human factors, it is fair game for us to sit here and talk about. Blake, what do we have up this week?
So this week, we're steering a balloon with sound waves that could be the secret to touching objects in virtual reality. So what makes virtual reality so compelling? Its ability to transport a user into any experience is also what makes it so fascinating, is the synchronized physical interactions in the real world that feel so complicated when you try to bring them to a virtual medium. So a system not only needs to be able to match the movements of VR users' hands, it also needs to be able to quickly move and position itself in any other way to never obstruct or interfere or cause injury while somebody's in a new experience. Researchers at the University of Tokyo Shinoa and Makino lab have developed a simpler solution built around a free-floating, neutrally buoyant helium balloon. So in a paper they published in December, the balloon, called the balloon's interface of midair haptic interaction, the researchers actually detailed an elaborate 360-degree rig that uses a series of ultrasonic phased array transducers to generate inaudible sound waves with enough force to push a floating balloon around and precisely control its motions. The setup also includes a pair of high-speed stereo imaging cameras to track the position of both the balloon and the position of someone who's trying to interact with it. The resulting experience is a physical object that a user in virtual space can touch and feel when they're trying to reach out and interact with a virtual object in VR. And I'm presumably thinking this gives them some sort of realistic feeling in terms of the haptic feedback they're getting from moving something. So that's
a good question.
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of the next step or where it goes. So this is kind of untimely because I should have talked about this in banter, but I've seen a bunch of YouTube ads recently for basically the standing in place treadmills for VR being like commercially available to just everyday buyers. So this sounds like a complete add-on to something like that, which would make the experience much more from a tactile perspective, immersive?
Yeah, well, first off, I hate to be the well actually guy, but I do want to. It's a fun piece of knowledge that I want to share with everyone.
Well, actually,
the omnidirectional treadmills that you mentioned, they have a name that's not omnidirectional treadmill. It's called perambulator.
A perambulator.
I love that term. So
that's an amazing name.
Yeah, maybe you've learned something today, maybe not. Anyway, perambulator. I love that term. Anyway, so yeah, I think I don't know. I struggle with seeing how this can be compacted into a certain space. I see this more of like a research application, especially because if you look at the device that's actually powering this, it's rather large. And the way they're doing this is really interesting. So they're using a helium balloon, and right now it's just a spherical balloon that, you know, we know it's a regular balloon. It's just filled with helium, and it's like a ball. It's not like, you know, the balloon shape, if you will. And there's I guess it's a series of I want to say it's like 6 or hang on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 of these airborne ultrasonic or ultrasound phased arrays that are spitting out these sound waves, and these sound waves connect with this balloon, and it can direct it in any direction. And the way it does that is it has some high-speed stereo cameras that monitor the position of the balloon and then can communicate with these airborne ultrasound phased array. I guess it is an array, so it's not multiple, but anyway, it communicates with this array, and it coordinates which of these 10 individual ultrasound speakers, I guess, need to send out a signal to move this balloon in one direction or the other. Right. So that's kind of my long-winded way of kind of describing how this thing works. And, you know, right now in this specific example, this University of Tokyo, these University of Tokyo researchers, they have basically created something that works in a small scale. I don't know if this would work if you were to spread out this array into the space of a room and to be able to control multiple balloon objects, right? So like imagine you have a balloon that's in the shape of like a brick. So if you went to go put your hand on something, it would be there. Now I'd imagine, you know, these ultrasound phase unit speakers, whatever they are, I'd imagine they don't have enough power to like if you were to put your hand on it to push back and make it feel tactile. I think this is more like let's say you need to tap a button in VR, and to give you some sort of haptic feedback, you press the button, right? That's one way you could do it. So I don't know, man. Like what are your thoughts on this?
I wonder if you could scale it down, because I mean, ultimately, you're definitely right. This is totally meant to be a research project and kind of experimenting in different ways for how you can provide, you know, movement of objects. Like let's say you pushed something, so you could actually, I guess, see the analog in VR and get some sort of feeling. But at the same time, you're right. I think they're pushing so little sound in terms of the force that it's emitting, even though it's inaudible, that if they tried to, you know, combine multiple of these in a smaller scale space, you may end up just having a bunch of interference and you're just going to lose the balloons potentially. But what I'm really interested in is how this kind of cashes out in the virtual reality experience, because the like technical aspects of how it's kind of put together outside makes a lot of sense. But the one thing I'm not quite sure about is this just providing more of a visual experience for the movement and motion of objects? Or is there potentially also kind of a touch component that's not yet showcased here or will be? Because I would imagine if you touch this, you're going to feel like it's a balloon, or you're going to feel like it's something that's not necessarily maybe what you're seeing, depending on the fidelity of the VR, I would guess. But I don't know. This is a pretty intense machine they've put together here. It looks something very futuristic.
So there's a couple things going on here. I want to mention your point about the in VR application, right? So I said it could be used as something as simple as like You have like a UI in VR that you need to interact with. And one of the challenges with a VR and a UI interface, right? Like let's give the classic example of the virtual watch. You pull up on your watch and there's a virtual display that's in front of your face. You can interact with it by touching it. However, you get no haptic feedback. So I can imagine them putting the balloon right in front of your finger. As you push your finger on a button, it is placed right in the way that makes it so that way that haptic feedback feels like you're pressing a button. That's one application. Another one, you can actually imagine, like, let's say there's a spherical ball floating in front of you that happens to have the same squishy properties as a balloon. If you reach out and touch it, it would be pretty convincing, as long as it was mapped to where it is in VR. And so that's another application. And that's why I was kind of alluding to potentially different shaped balloons. If you have, it only works with squishy things. I don't know how you would have like a solid balloon unless you have some sort of rigid, lightweight material that does not react to squeezing in the same way a balloon does, right? Like that's the only way that I can imagine this working for hard objects that you would interact with in VR. And so that's the second application. The third application that I think is not even mentioned in this article, but I'm thinking, down the line here. What if you had a QR code or some sort of visual mapping element on this balloon that then provided some sort of physical representation of an augmented reality object? So if you are in like a space, right, and you have this array shooting their ultrasound waves at this balloon, if you have tracking QR codes or tracking visual tracking on it, your augmented reality headset would pick that up, and then that movement would be less jittery because you could track it. It's a real object in the environment that's moving, and there'd be different markers throughout the room that would anchor it. And so that could be a cool effect too, because then you could reach out and actually touch that object, right? Like think about my brain here is thinking about the training remote from Star Wars, right? It's a hard object, but if you'd imagine, like, you could reach out and touch that thing as it's going around and shooting imaginary lasers at you with your lightsaber in augmented reality, that could be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one point that the research paper does really make is the withstanding the fact that basically touching this thing, it's going to feel not quite right. Especially if it's a hard object and it might not correlate with whatever you're seeing. But what's important here is kind of that, I just felt something in VR, and I did actually end up touching it. And even though maybe it's not a one-to-one mapping of what I would expect it to feel like, it's just a little bit extra in terms of immersion, and you're really starting to get that feel for what's going on. They also make a really good point later in the article about the safety aspect of it. So right now there's there's potential that you could have, other kind of machinery in the room, or like we talked about, I'm going to say it wrong, the moving treadmill that's not an omnidirectional treadmill. There we are. Something like that where it's like a serious piece of hardware. Well, if you make a mistake and you fall, like, you could really hurt yourself. Whereas something like this, where we're able to kind of create controlled experiences maybe with, these various floating objects in the room that you can either touch, freely bump into, and not really have any physical impact. It's just a way to, I think, start expanding what VR is ultimately going to be able to achieve in different terms of like touching and feeling different things.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit on something here. I do want to mention there's other ways of sort of touching objects in VR, right? There's the spider arm that you have that you can that will basically pull back on your fingers to make you feel like you're touching something physically there. And then there's other ways of doing it too, where you actually have a physical object mapped to a physical or to a virtual object, and there's that communication as well. I think this one is interesting because you can have a movable object as long as the texture matches that, right? So there's different ways of interacting with it, and as long as it sort of maps to that feeling, then it could work. Any other thoughts on this